Hello, hello. Ariane here with a very quick hot take video. Now, with Shift Up releasing all of these information basically at the last minute, I do not have the time due to my real life circumstances with the work and university and everything to properly prepare something as in-depth as I did, for example, for Nagatia and other Nikkes in the past. Without further ado, I will go into her kit and go over some of the kind of very quick theory crafting that I've managed to squeeze in during my free time, and also discussing with some people during, again, my free time very quickly. So, Red Hood is a burst 1 through 3, which is very unique. Attacker Pilgrim, Sniper Rifle, Coated Iron. Her first skill, Glaring Eyes, activates when casting a normal attack and affects herself. It grants her 3.81% at charge speed, stacking up to 10 times and lasts for 5 seconds. Now, because her charge time, even if you were to charge all the way to full for takes 1 second, this is essentially a permanent effect unless you are forced into taking cover for an extended period of time for it to fall off. The maximum amount of stacks being 38.1% total charge speed for herself. Also, when entering battle, she converts all of the charge damage in excess above 100 charge speed in excess above 100% into charge damage at a ratio of 2.4. So 1% of charge speed over 100 will become 2.4% charge damage. More on that later when it comes to the calculations and what it really signifies. Her second skill, Wild Tooth, activates when entering battle and grants her Pierce permanently. Unlike Alice, she has permanent Pierce. No matter what happens, no matter what you do, she's always piercing. Also, when she activates her Burst 1 version of her burst, called Beast Cage, we'll go into those later, she increases her own defense and all of her allies' defense by 50.68% of her own defense for 10 seconds. This is kind of like a little bonus, but not really all that important. It also, when you use her Burst 2 sequence, which is Last Howl, give her 33.04% leech for 10 seconds. Now, when casting her Burst 3 version of her burst, she grants herself 71.42% attack for 10 seconds. Now, her burst skill is where a lot of things go haywire as well. Because she can cover Burst 1, Burst 2, or Burst 3 at will, it will have different effects based on those different bursts. All of those bursts have a base of 40-second cooldown, so keep that in mind. So when using step 1, we have Beast Cage. Increases the attack of all of the allies based on her own attack by 77.55% for 10 seconds. This is very relevant because she's an attacker, so her base attack is much higher than others. So for example, if you have something like a supporter, I don't know, Summer Anise, this will benefit her more than if she had been based on her own base attack, for example, for Summer Anise. Now, it also has a secondary effect once per battle that is reducing the cooldown of burst skill by 40 seconds, which is what enables her to use her burst twice in a row within a single burst rotation. When used in step 2, it's called the Last Howl. It affects herself, it taunts all enemies for 10 seconds, grants HP potency of 74.88% for 10 seconds, and again has the end step effect of reducing the burst skill by 40 seconds, and it only activates once per battle. So this is, you probably don't really want to activate this all that much, generally speaking, but we'll talk a little bit more about all of the abilities by the end of it. So when used in step 3, which is the burst 3 version, we have a Red Wolf. She buffs herself and changes her weapon type. Now, her attack reduces from 69.04% ratio to 27.8% ratio. Now, what's really weird is the wording, but it's probably just an inconsistency because attack is always final attack anyways. Her full charge damage is 250%. I don't know why they feel they need to specify that, because as we can see on the top right, her full charge damage is already 250%. And it lasts for 10 seconds. The additional effect is that her pierce range is expanded by 100%. This is the double of Nihilister's own effect for 10 seconds. And her charge speed increases by 100.8% for 10 seconds, meaning that she reaches that cap instantly of 100% charge speed, meaning that she basically will spam those attacks very quickly. Now, looking at some of the videos of Red Hood on her that float around in the official related content, we see that Red Hood basically has infinite ammo during her burst cycling. Now, I would like to show it here, but I do not have, unfortunately, the video handy. Maybe I can. We can talk about it during the stream. Whatever. So she will have infinite ammo, which means that she will always hit the maximum amount of bullets. And this, combined with the other effects, will allow her to do quite a bit of damage. Now, the problem is this attack reduction, right? So now we're going to talk about whether you should pull or not. She is decent, she's quite good, and she's quite flexible in the sense that she can cover burst 1 as a 40-second or burst 3 as a DPS. And she can kind of cover both once per battle, assuming that that's how she works. So my base assumption is that the cooldown is shared across all stages. If she doesn't share the cooldown across all stages, she will become significantly better. So I am talking here about the worst case scenario, which is unfortunately the most likely scenario, which really damages her strength. So going into it, right, doing quite a bit of, doing some very quick calculations, this reduction of her ratio of attack down to 27.8% when compared to something like Alice, for example, well, makes her have basically a gap in damage where she does 42.95% of Alice's damage, assuming they're hitting the exact same number of targets at similar stat levels if we take into consideration their own individual buffs. So I'm not taking the burst 1 into consideration here because that would happen only once per battle. And this is something that has been talked by some other people as well, is that even if we take into consideration this charge speed into charge damage, unfortunately the scaling is not strong enough to compensate. So even with this charge speed as a baseline, she's still lower in charge damage bonus to Alice, for example. The reason being that Alice as a baseline, shout out to Nikke.gg for these type of stats, they have a really great website, you should definitely check them out, is 350%. Which means that here we already are below that. Now, if we were to add more and more charge speed, yes, we would have more and more charge damage. The problem is that realistically speaking, even if we were to add, I don't know, an additional 10% of charge speed, we would go above the charge damage bonus, but the weapon skill multiplier would still kneecap everything. And that weapon skill multiplier is what's really kneecapping her ability to be comparable in damage to Alice, for example, which is the closest comparison that we have in terms of kit and how they function. Because Alice also wants to stack charge speed, Red Hood also wants to stack charge speed, and they're both snipers that do quite a bit of damage using very, very quick snipes. Now, not all is doom and gloom, because, I mean, Alice is top of the meta, so she is usable and she's quite good, and if she cleaves, so for example in campaign stages, she can out-damage Alice. All she needs to do technically, if we exclude overload gear, is just cleave 2 additional targets. Now, with that increase in range with the radius, which is through her burst 3, she will basically be able to cleave far more than Alice, as assuming that they have the same base radius. Now, this is a big assumption as well. she would cover 75% more surface, which means she would have a much bigger circle based on just the fact that she has double the radius, right? So for example, Nihilister, and then we have a Red Hood here. And that is because, yes, Nihilister also has this gimmick of increasing the pierce radius. In her case, it's 50% for a singular round, and it's when she does a full charge. In the case of a Red Hood, it is quite literally for 10 full seconds, no strings attached, only she needs to burst. And she will be piercing permanently just because of her S2 granting her permanent pierce. So, if she cleaves, she will outdamage Alice. The problem is that against bosses, there's not that many bosses where you could theoretically cleave that much. Which means that she will become a niche powerful Nikke in scenarios where you can cleave. Now, I've seen some people do joke comparisons to Scarlet. That's not a very good comparison, because the only way you could kind of compare both would be if there's absolutely no targets to cleave or pierce, in which case, why would you even bother bringing a pierced Nikke in the first place, unless she has absurd damage like Alice, for example, to the point where it doesn't even matter that she's not piercing. If she's piercing, the comparison doesn't stand at all. Now, these are basically some of the things related to her. The other thing to keep in mind is that, yes, the converted value of charge speed is good, and theoretically you could run a build of, for example, 4 attack, 4 elemental, and for example 4 charge speed, which would be viable in the sense that she has unlimited ammo during her burst, as it was seen during the demonstration video. But maybe you could also run some ammunition, it really depends. It really will be a lot of trial and error. I have not been able to do a lot of calculations in that regard. But let's talk about that conversion. So here I run a very, very quick conversion where I just put 1% charge speed extra above the cap. Although I believe I forgot to put... I forgot to put Red Hood's own additional charge speed. But for the sake of illustration, I will remove this and just showcase what 1% over does to the overall damage. So here everything is equal, and the only difference is that 1% extra charge speed that is over the cap. And this translates to a 0.96% damage difference, thanks to the damage formula. Now, if we were to add something like charge damage, so again, 1% charge damage, what we would have is a kind of a 0.56% gap instead. Charge damage in that regard, when it comes to overload lines, is more accessible in higher quantities. So we would have 14.63 at max versus 6.09. So technically, OL lines would stack much more easily when it comes to charge speed versus charge damage. You would stack more charge damage and you would win out with charge damage by a bit in terms of just about everything. But there is something to keep in mind, is the idea of how quickly she will fire thanks to the charge speed. So this would be off her burst, she would fire faster. Of course, there would be the conversion on top of that, but if we were to just take into consideration the additional charge speed through OL and the like, OL meaning overload gear, we would have more shots per minute, or a faster fire rate in general per second, allowing to squeeze more shots, which could theoretically, along with the pierce and such situations, maybe could outdamage the very small gap between the charge damage and the charge speed that is created from that overload gap in availability of stats, which is here, with the charge damage at 14.63 versus the 6.09. And I am mentioning that because 6.09, when we convert it with the 2.4 multiplier, is 14.61 charge damage. Hence why I'm referring to it, because we would be losing 0.2% in actual stats with the conversion. It's necessary to remark that. However, again, there could be a case to be made about quick scoping and sniping in general off burst, along with the conversion, even if there is a loss in the conversion, to compensate that damage loss. So overall, Red Hood is a very, very complex Nikke, and I wish I had more time to just go in depth and, do timelines like I did, for example, for Negatia and the like. But for now, I will say she's a decently strong Nikke, but she will be a little bit on the niche side of things when compared to major meta Nikkes in general, such as Alice, especially such as Alice. So that will be it for the hot take video. When it comes to PvP, I will just mention it very quickly. She will do less damage than Alice. She will cleave more than she will be cleaving instead, but generally speaking, what you want is very quick kills, because there's always out sustain and other issues like Rapunzel's, Noah's, all of that stuff that just out sustains, out leaves, or if you don't kill quickly enough, when they burst, they will kill you. So Red Hood in PvP, I am not a huge believer unless you're running her as a burst 1 buffer, in which case, because she's a sniper rifle, she will not generate as much burst as you would want her to, so you would get outpaced by your opponents. So yes, even in PvP, her viability is very, very shaky in general. The biggest question is whether or not there will be shared cooldown. It's very, very likely that there will be shared cooldown, so she will be niche, and she will still be strong though, but she will be more niche than, for example, Elise. So that will be it for the hot take, and thanks a lot for listening. Sorry for the very quick fire, fast-paced hot take video. This is the closest you will actually ever be to a hot take video, along with the small white hot take video. But I just don't have enough time. So I hope you guys do tell me in the comments if you will be rolling for her. How excited are you for the anniversary? And other than that, Ariane out.